Okay, real quick, yeah, you know me, I always have something I'd like to say or share. But first off, good afternoon. Thanks you guys for being here. You know, obviously it's an exciting time. I mean, obviously when you play 162, you understand the demand of that, but when you get on the other end of this and you have to then start a new short series, you have to turn the page quick. And you know, there's going to be a lot of questions on what we end up doing with our roster. Obviously, we can position our roster a little differently for a 3-game series than we might for a 5 or a 7. So we're still sort of working through some of those dynamics. So I'm sure there's a few questions on that, and I'll try to walk you through that as best I can. But as I look back at the 162, I certainly understand it's just and recognize it's just been a magical year for the St. Louis Cardinals. You think about all the different subplots that we've gotten to enjoy or witness and be a part of, and for all of you that cover the Cardinals on a day-to-day basis, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And to have a season where Yadier Molina is retiring and then bringing back somebody like an Albert Pujols to be a part of this has been really special, I think, for everybody involved. And it made for great memories, but now we're trying to create new memories. And as we begin tomorrow, that's what that's all about. And so as special as 2022 has been, we hope to add to that. We hope to increase what that legacy looks like of this team. And so that's what all preparation has led up to, and really looking forward to what tomorrow brings. So, you know, overall, I think our club is in a good spot. We still have a couple little question marks on the roster, as I mentioned, but hopefully we have that sort of nailed down by the time we break today, and, you know, looking forward to tomorrow. So take questions.
Hey, Mo. I know we've all talked about this a lot in the last couple of months, but with the trade deadline, can you share maybe some insight? I know you have, but even some more about why Quintana? Why was that a guy you targeted? And if we're doing this, why Montgomery?
Yeah, so as many of you know, we were looking for starting pitching. Obviously, there were some big names that were being moved, and maybe some names that weren't on everyone's radar. But starting with Q, he was someone that we felt like his profile really matched well with our club. He was someone that it's not necessarily a high strikeout rate, but a guy that gets ground balls in play. You pair that with our defense, we thought we could see more out of that, and certainly that has been a success. And as we envisioned it, it came through. And then in Monty's case, I mean, we really look at Monty as one of the better pitchers in the game. And you know, in terms of obviously we had to give up a quality player to get him, someone off your major league roster, which is not necessarily always your strategy at the trade deadline, but given the depth we had in the outfield, we thought it was something we could do and sustain, and so far we have been able to do that. But both guys obviously injected a lot of success right away to our organization and our team, and it was something that was much needed. And you know, clearly we're probably not here without them, but you know, sometimes you make deals, they work out, sometimes they don't, but these particular ones certainly helped us.
Okay, Derek and then Tyler.
May I ask 2 questions, one to follow up on Benjamin's and then the second one. We all know in the winter when the bidding is on free agents how you kind of have an idea as to who you're bidding against, the other teams. Is that the case at the trade deadline? Do you have a sense of how in demand a player is and how that might change the price you have to pay?
I think clearly, depending on how well you guys are doing your job, we have a better idea or not, like what that market might look like. But you know, usually teams don't tell me, hey, it's Seattle and Oakland bidding against you, right?
Say you got somebody else, you have to outbid.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
There's always that secondary ask and so forth. So, you know, trying to understand the trade market and how to value it is something I think we understand. Now, sometimes we don't always get deals done, but we certainly try. I think historically, the July 31st deadline is a seller's market.
Then the other question, the decisions you have to make on the roster, any of those related to health specifically, do you need to know more about where Helsley is at this moment for the next 3 days before making that call?
It would be helpful just to see how he feels today. The Ryan Helsley question, if no one heard that. But yeah, I think, you know, overall we're pretty optimistic where he is, but certainly want to see what he feels like today before we finalize that. Rosters are due tomorrow. Historically, the Cardinals turn theirs in the night before, which we intend to do, but just trying to buy a few more hours.
Tyler and then John.
Hey, Mo. Good to see you.
All right, Tyler.
Couple questions. First of all, what do you think of the new format here? I mean, you won a division, and you're playing in the wild card round. Last year, you were a wild card, and you're playing the wild card round. Would you like more of an incentive? Would you like to have had more of a reward for winning the division, or do you like this setup?
I take a lot of pride in winning the division, so I think that was great, super. In terms of the new format, I think it's a little premature to start saying whether you like it or not. Probably like it less if we don't go forward, but that's not really a fair proxy. Look, I think it's kind of exciting. I think it's nice that we are rewarded with 3 home games. Certainly in a season where you're coming off of 162, lots of travel, knowing that you're here for the next few days is kind of nice. So overall, I think it's a little early to say whether you like it or dislike it, but I think conceptually I'm in favor of it.
And also, this is, if my math is right, I think this is your 8th time to the postseason since 2011. The Phillies, obviously it's their first, but I think, right, you did 12, 13, 14, 15, and then the last 4 years, right? 22. So how do you think this team is equipped to, go all the way compared to some of those other teams that came close? I mean, what gives you more confidence in this group maybe than some of those previous 7?
I think like all postseason runs are typically defined by who gets hot. Can you put things together at the right time? Clearly, the last few weeks of September haven't gone exactly as planned, but understanding like once we clinched, we were able to restructure our roster from time to time. But this team has the right components to go deep and to be successful, but clearly it's got to come together, right? And I think probably anybody that's representing a team today is going to say something very similar, because you look back at successful runs, whether you think back to 04, 06, 11, 13, you had people doing a lot of positive things during those deeper runs. And so do I feel this team is built for a deep run? Yes. But it has to click and it has to come together. Well, I think obviously having 2 guys that are going to receive many MVP votes is certainly helpful. We have guys in the starting rotation that are throwing the ball well. We have a solid to well above average bullpen. I mean, these are all things that, like, when you look to be successful, you need to be able to score runs. You need to be able to prevent runs. We're still an elite defensive team. You think about all these factors that, when working, should produce wins, but they all have to come together.
Okay, John, and then Katie, do you have one after?
John, did you guys make a final decision on Tyler, and how nice is it to have young guys like Donovan and Yepez who can play multiple positions to help you out there?
Yeah. So on the Tyler O'Neill question, I would say he's not going to make this round. So that's not really a surprise to anybody. In terms of having players with flexibility, yeah, it's great. You look at having somebody like a Brendan Donovan who's just come in, played multiple positions. I think back to when this club was struggling a little bit in May, and here's a guy that was playing like every day. We were desperately looking for additional offense other than Mr. Goldschmidt, and he really did yeoman's work. And then to do it and being asked to stand in multiple positions, never complaining, just a really impressive young man. I think he ended up, obviously being a very key contributor to this team, and I think having guys that play multiple positions are always very helpful, especially in the month of October.
Well, when Ollie was up, he disclosed that all 5 starters will be on the wild card roster. How do you think that your rotational depth will be a strength in terms of how you use it in a 3-game series?
Well, I'm hoping we don't have to tap into our rotational depth in a 3-game series, but what it does allow you to do is keep your bullpen intact if you are behind in a game. and it also gives you a little bit more flexibility how you want to think about maybe turning over their roster. So having all those guys being a part of this roster makes sense to us, and I think it even in a short series, you still want to be able to cover those innings or outs.
Okay, I'm going to go with Alden, and then we'll get to Ben Fred.
Hey, John, back here. Is there an aspect? What has stood out to you from Oliver Marmol in his first season as manager? And is there an aspect of the job that maybe he's handled better than you would have expected coming into the season?
Yeah, Ollie's been, I think, just impressive for a first-year manager, especially at his age, coming in here and doing what he's done. But I think one of the things that stood out to me was just his ability to work with players, have that balance of a friendship / I'm still the manager. I think he's done a tremendous job with the media. I think he's been candid but not over the top. So I look at all the things he's done here, and he's just done an amazing job. And I think we were sitting on the plane last night, and I just said to him, I go you had a great year. I mean, you think about the stepping into what he had to deal with right away, getting named to being a manager. I think it was quite surprising to a lot of people that we did make that change, and then for him to just to come in and do what he did was, I think, just tremendously impressive. And then I would also add, we also had the labor situation, and here's a guy that you're finally named a major league manager, and you can't even have a normal spring training. It's just there were a lot of things that were maybe facing headwinds that normally could be they weren't expected, but yet he handled them with grace. He handled them as a professional, and yes, he learned a lot, he grew a lot, but I mean, even from day one, I think he hit the ground running in a very positive way. So I've really enjoyed working with him on a personal level. I think he's been amazing, and I know I speak for a lot of people that he's a fun guy to be around.
Ben Fred, and then Jet.
I'll follow up on the Ollie topic. You kind of talked about when you guys named him as he could be someone who kind of connects all of the silos. And I think we've seen examples of that, of more players producing and more depth and more flexibility. Are there other examples that jump out to you of him getting a stronger Cardinals team out of taking the strengths and putting them all together and how he uses them?
Well, I just think he understands what's in the toolbox, right? There's a lot of different ways to measure talent, to evaluate players, and is there a perfect model to say optimization of the athlete? One might argue, but there is still the subjective or human element, and I think that he's found that great balance between using modern tools or modern analytics to balance that with what he's seeing and what he's feeling. And I think all of us, we can all look at spreadsheets, we can all look at WAR or whatever metric you want to choose. But reality is a manager has to be in that clubhouse. They know what's happening with individual players on a given day, where they are, who he can use, who he cannot. I always find it funny, on Twitter, when someone gets mad, we didn't use Helsley that day. Well, maybe he just wasn't available, and yet the Twitter world blows up. And I think being a manager, it's really hard, right? But I think for him, I think one of the things that makes him successful is he's smart. He uses all these resources that are available to him, and he understands how to translate it to the current player versus working with his coaching staff, which I should add. I mean, they've been great too. I mean, I really think they work well as a team. They communicate well, and as a whole, they're just a good group to be around.
Has anything about him surprised you this season? I mean, you talked about a lot of these strengths going in, but has anything pleasantly or caught you off guard in a good way, or maybe just a surprising way?
I didn't realize that he'd get so mad at umpires sometimes, but I should. That's just joking. But no, I think really he's just. He's just a really thoughtful guy, and I'd say probably the thing that's probably the most impressive is he didn't have a whole lot of training with media, and whenever you're bringing someone in that's not really ever had to do that, you always wonder how that's going to work. Will it be hopefully seamless? And I think from his standpoint, really all aspects of the business side of this or the job side of it, he did seamlessly. But I think he was able to build good, positive relationships with this group, with the other groups, and I'm not really saying I'm surprised, but he did it in a way that I didn't like. There was really no hand-holding, and it was impressive.
Okay, Jeff, and then Martin.
Mo, you mentioned the flexibility you all have had down the stretch here. This last week has been the longest stretch of your tenure that you all have had really nothing to play for in the last stretch of 7 games here. How useful was that as an evaluative period for you all as you were building your roster here? And do you feel like you got the maximum out of that stretch these last 7 games?
Yeah, I didn't look at it as simply like an extended tryout for individuals or something like that, but it did allow some players that weren't getting at-bats to get at-bats. It did allow really some guys that were maybe getting tired to rest. I think the key is you want to make sure when you go into a series that you're at full stride. And I do feel like where we are from a team standpoint, we were able to get the right people, the right rest going into it. And so I do think we are entering tomorrow's game refreshed and ready to go.
Mo, could you loosely assess what you thought you'd get out of Albert back in March, and then what you got out of him, and then slightly in jest, but who gets the most credit for him being here? I know Yadi and Waino were FaceTiming him. Ali was talking to him. You signed him. Bill signs off on it, I guess. Can you explain maybe how he ended up here and who gets the most credit?
Well, those are a lot of questions there. So starting with, did we expect him to perform like he did? Exactly what we were hoping for. No, obviously, and I've said this many times, we when we signed Albert, yes, we expected him to be someone that was going to contribute, that would help make our team better. Clearly the second half, he's probably been one of the best hitters on our team. And then to, put up the offensive numbers that he's doing, not only at his age, but in a time when it mattered, incredibly impressive, right? And in terms of who deserves the most credit for Albert being back here, probably Albert.
Okay, Derek, and then Commissioner.
Mo, somewhat along those lines, you mentioned the memories that you guys have been able to create. A lot of those were individual or tandem with the start record, the battery record, 700, in Marmol's case is first. How did you see these individual accomplishments and some of those chases funnel into team success? Did you see them become team events or maybe even team motivation?
So I think back to my own career when I remember like Mark McGwire chasing 62 when we were chasing 100 wins for the first time in 04. I think like the ability for some of our younger players to experience what we all got to witness this year is really almost generationally moving. And in sense of like, you think of our fan base, that many of these young kids or fans that didn't ever get to see Albert play got to see Albert play. And now they have this love for the Cardinals again. And I think the same can be said in that clubhouse where, I've had players come up to me and they're like, this guy's good. Like I know you got to see it for 11 years when he was here, but it's amazing. And I'm like, yeah. And so I do think like anybody that sort of like that has a legacy like Albert's, I think just naturally raises the bar for others. And so whether it's him mentoring younger players, whether it's players just watching him, show up early, stay late, do the extra things, do the little things to be better, is helping all of them. And so, I look at sort of those core players that I think we're referring to with Albert, Yadi, and Waino. It's such a unique trio in the sense of how much they care about doing things right. And so the group of players in there that got to experience it, that never had really been around them in for a season or as much time as they got to spend, they're the lucky ones, and they will benefit.
Did that last run as a group did that become inspiration at all to make it run as long as possible, or did it inform any of the choices you made this year to put together like the best team possible to have a long run? Well,
I think like as I mentioned when we were speaking about Yadi and Albert the other day, one of the words I used was inspiring. I feel like both these guys do that daily. And in terms of like how you think about someone like chasing 700 and doing it in such a dramatic way where he hits 2 in one game, I mean, like, we're all human, right? Like, and so are our players, and they also wear fan hats. And yeah, I think they were pulling for him to be successful, but as much as these individual things we were chasing, it was still about team winning. And I think in the end, these guys helped put that together. And it's been, like I've mentioned 100 times, it's been so much fun to be a part of.
Commish, and then Bob, did you still have one?
One of the managers you hired and was successful early on got fired again last night. Do you have some thoughts on Mike Matheny?
Yeah, I was sorry to see that. Like I've told many people in this business, it's a hard game. It's a hard business. Very few relationships don't end in divorce in this game, which is unfortunate. I certainly wish him well. You always hate to see when someone has to lose their job, and hopefully there are brighter days for him ahead.
We're going to Bob here, and then, sorry, Dave. And then you are. All right.
Good. Now I know you're Dave.
Hey, John, with Albert, was there any time during the second half you had moments where you sat back in your box just remembering what it was like the first 11 years, just flashbacks?
Yeah, like almost daily. I mean, like you think about what he's really done since the All-Star break. I mean, like to put up the kind of offensive numbers that he's done. I mean, it's been amazing, and it kind of reminds you of like what greatness is. In other words, we all probably dream about it. We all wish we could achieve it, but very few of us ever get there. And here's a guy that for 11 years in St. Louis was, as I've said before, probably one of the best, greatest hitters on earth, right? So that's rarefied air. Then he goes away, and he comes back, and all of a sudden he's back putting the team on his shoulders or on his back. He's carrying us. He's getting key hits, and he's doing it in a way that this city embraced. For anybody that's been lucky enough to been at the ballpark the last few weeks, it's had that sort of 98 feel again. And, I think that's really cool and something special. And, yeah, to watch him do what he's doing is simply put, magical.
Last thing, did it kind of open your eyes what he did for the Dodgers last year? I mean, obviously you saw him in the playoffs, but, hey, this guy can still play.
We recognize that for sure. I think sometimes for all players, a change of scenery is welcomed, and I think in that particular case it was. But then, to get him back here, I think it definitely brought a little adrenaline, a little energy, and he embraced it in a way that it'll be historic.
Okay, let's get to the Enquirer. Get them a chance.
I was just wondering about your memories of that 2011 series. I mean, it was a heck of a series. Pretty dramatic too. You guys went on to do what you did, and they, haven't been back since. Did you have any impression on that night? Kind of how momentous a turning point it was for kind of both your franchises.
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot, right? Because it literally became almost like a fork in the road. One went right, one went left, and it was such an epic game. Probably one of the greatest games any of us got to watch. I mean, you had just two, incredible pitchers going head to head. Our first two hitters scored the one run, and then it was just shut down city. And yet, for us, it became almost more of a springboard. And then, in Philly's case, it became a turning point for their franchise. And I'm hopeful that had we been on the other side of that, it wouldn't have been the same, but you never know. And, for us to have that deep run in October, then you may remember there were, some really key things happening in this organization too, where our manager, Hall of Fame manager Tony La Russa, was stepping down, and then we knew Albert Pujols was entering free agency. And so there was a lot going on at that time, and fortunately for this franchise and this organization, we were able to really keep our stride and keep going. But there were pitfalls that were potential, and we were fortunate enough to navigate them. But that's one game I don't think anybody that was ever a part of will ever forget.
It's kind of crazy you guys saw 3 guys on the 40-man that night.
There's so much loyalty here, right? That is sort of incredible though. But and think about where they were at the time in their careers, but yet we're still kind of getting a little taste of greatness still today.
Okay, John, and then Daniel.
John, when Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado talk about they wanted to come here because there's expectations to win, there's a chance to win. How much pride do you take in that? And have you had conversations with those guys about, they're here because they feel like they have a chance to win?
Well, I think it's a compliment that players want to be a part of something that they view as a successful franchise or a model franchise, and so that does not go unnoticed. But there is the pressure of then actually succeeding, right? And clearly those two gentlemen are key parts of that. But we know in this industry or in this game that you need more than one player to truly win. And so I think, part of our success has been able to draft well, develop well. And I think that's one of the things that makes this organization attractive to others. And, speaking with Nolan the other day, I mean, we talked about a couple things. One is like, this is what he hoped for, to be a part of something that you got to October consistently. And then he also, we were lamenting a little bit about what we were seeing out of Albert. And, it's truly just been an incredible ride for even someone like him that hadn't experienced what Albert was doing here prior to his departure. And so now to see it and live it, again, I think that's what's been made this year so much fun, because now guys they're gonna have that in their memory bank.
John, I know you touched on Ollie as a first-year manager, what kind of he's handled well. I mean, what is it about this collective group of rookies that you feel like maybe they've handled better than maybe you guys expected?
So the question is kind of our younger players, how they collectively performed. I would say that, we feel like when we bring players up that they're ready to play. Now, that's a simple statement, and we've been wrong before, and there's always a learning curve at the big league level. But I do think like one of the traits that we try to possess is being patient, giving guys a chance to catch their own footing. But I really think it's a preparation of what you're seeing out of our minor league system to when they do get this opportunity that they can take advantage of it. And, I think that one of the nice balances, if you will, if you think about a roster, when you have people like Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, you're being afforded the chance to give younger players a chance to play. And yes, there's a lot of pressure on younger players to do that because there's such expectations to have someone else produce other than those two. But having said that, there's also a level of comfort. And I think, from Ollie's standpoint, he knows how the Cardinals work. I mean, he's been around, so he knew what to expect from that regard. But I think, it's really just a great compliment, I think, to our minor league system, especially Ben Johnson and his staff, of just having people prepared to play well at the major league level. Thank you.
Real quick, in reference to the 2011 series, have you been in touch with Bill Finley about any possible locations of squirrels for this series?
Are you implying we should find a squirrel, or
are there any around? Knowing that
well, there are a few in my backyard, I can tell you that.
Thank you, Mo.
Great memory.